Greetings, Jokoistas. Welcome to this week's Joko Conversation, where we will be looking at some of the news of this week, including the news of the last day or so. Right, the leaked chats among the young Republicans. I am Brother Youssef, a professor and a poet, professor of composition and literature, creative writing, and a poet of life, I guess. I try anyway. Um, anyway, welcome. And as always, I'm with my partner and comrade, also an educator, cultural worker, artist, Tasha. Hi.
Hi, greetings, and more than any of those things, and even more, I would say, true to form, I'm a concerned sister in the community who, you know, uh, feels like she's got a stake in the work of helping her community find rest and flourishing, and right, he thinks it's solving these problems is everybody's game, and so,
Mm-hmm.
and that's tradition of my household. You got it honest. I got it honest. So, um, and so grateful for that, which is our segue into our opening, the way we open, um, in recognizing our personal ancestral lineages, through which we get the habits, mannerisms, modes of thinking, um, set of experiences that help us to become people who value this consciousness for helping the social order, uh, that what help to bend the arc toward justice, right? And order and prosperity for all, and all of those things that are supposed to be scarce and um, locked behind gates of privilege, right? They're behind the plexiglass, is it? The plexiglass and the CVS pharmacy. You can't get to this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but we say, yeah, all of the best things in human life are for all the humans, because all the humans have a role in producing all of the best things in life, and the more that humans have, uh, ways to participate in happy human society and creation and innovation and all that, the more that humans do that. And so, yeah, a just and wonderful world is realizable and doable and not a figment of any kind of, you know, silly idealism. It's realizable and worth realizing. We also always forefront that we are and assert that we are members of the African global family, and lift up and um, offer our gratitude to those folks in the African global family who have championed and contributed in large and recognizable ways, whether we know their names or not, to this endeavor of, right, bringing uh, joy and flourishing out of immiseration and oppression and depression. We recognize that and uplift that lineage as it is expressed in the African global family and through the African global family. And we always acknowledge that any work that we're doing, any thoughts that we're having, and any of these things that we're creating, we do in the unceded lands and territories of the original people of the colonial US, of the colonial California, of the colonial Los Angeles, and we acknowledge that we're here at the hospitality of folks who have not forgotten their culture, their place, their lineage, who have um, maintained their sovereignty and identity. We are in full alliance and recognition that anything we do it their hospitality and the hospitality of their ancestors, who also um, are on the other side of the veil, as we say, chopping it up with our ancestors and us to helping from that side to guide us through and to this thing that we're trying to achieve. So, all that being said, by way of opening the way for our conversation, tea. I say tea. And to you, dear Dr. Doucet.
Feedback to you.
Mm-hmm.
The yes, right. As you're talking, right, thinking about the local indigenous people, in particular the Tongva Quiche, um, and whether or not they are federally recognized, right? And because I know that that's an issue, and that's an issue for many of the First Nations that aren't federally recognized, and the Tongva Quiche might not be. I'm not sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like the Chumash, who are federally recognized, but I don't think always were. I think that might be fairly recent. I'm
Mm-hmm.
guessing at that, but I kind of have a memory of, reading about that struggle to be federally recognized. Um, and but and I know there are consequences for that in terms of interacting with the settler colonial state and access to
Mm-hmm.
reparations, and claims for
Mm-hmm.
land back, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but most importantly, though, right, the people recognize themselves, right, as you were saying, their memory of who they are,
Mm-hmm.
right, and it
Yeah.
starts there for any kind of wholeness, right, and you know recuperation, right, reflowering of the culture and the language, and um, as we have talked about before, in so many ways, right? Every day we 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 honor those. We bring, we keep alive, right? Those traditions, just in the place names, around town, just in the place
Yes.
names. And I think
Mm-hmm.
what that suffix is, it the nga suffix, Kawinga, Tahunga,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Topanga, Cucamonga, all of those, right, are, Tongva Quiche, I believe, right? And so all those ways, right, that, we reassert the Tongva Quiche presence, that, everybody in town, everybody in the county, right, is doing it and not knowing it, right? Um,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
that recognition, right? It's so just I thought of that, right, in thinking about um, the importance of that self recognition, to even think about the worth of advocating for federal recognition from basically your colonizer, right? But there
Mm-hmm.
there are, again, there are consequences for not having recognition under these colonial circumstances. The you become detribalized, right? Like so many of us, a history of detribalized Africans, which is how the brother Eskia Mpalele describes himself in his autobiography, Down Second Avenue, right, from South Africa, Azania, a detribalized African. He knows, I think, Sotho background, and I know he talks about speaking Sotho,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that knowledge in by itself doesn't constitute, right, what was lost, right? So, sees himself as a detribalized, uses that language, a detribalized African, and the consequences of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of with that, and I was thinking about that, let's take a couple of minutes, and I'm asking you actually if you would take a couple of minutes and tell the story of our Odu that people see on the screen.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of right, reclaiming and using culture, and yes, it is the um, Odu. I haven't said it in so long.
The
Shame on
Osa,
me.
right?
Let me
Osa.
think about it. Let me think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, that is it. The Osa Otura, and it means um, or part of the proverb, because any of the Odu are going to have many proverbs connected with them that
Mhm, mhm,
explicate their dynamic, right? What they do, and the one that we selected and was recommended, right, for us by Baba Femi was um, those who speak for those who speak the truth. The gods protect them. Open the way for
um,
them, right?
there was a distortion in your voice. Can you repeat that just as you started to say what it means?
Okay. Those who speak the truth, the gods look out for, right? So your way is open, and you're able to, right, do what you need to do in the material world through speaking truth, right? So it's
Yeah.
about truth telling, uplifting
Mhm,
truth, abiding
mhm,
by, all of the various manifestations of uplifting truth. And of course, we've um, taken that, utilized that to mean uh, holding forth for truthfulness, and
mhm,
as accuracy in information, as the uh, uh, practice of self
mhm,
examination, right? To weigh, be in a constant, right, attitude of being willing to weigh what we think we know, right?
mhm,
Right?
mhm,
In
mhm,
Are we in accuracy, right?
mhm,
Accurate, but accurate. Inaccuracy. So
mhm,
yeah, that is Osatura. That is the Odu. That and that plate where the Odu is drawn in corn flour was done by a young sister from here who was a repatriate and a trainee in IFA practice at the time, and did our, for the first few Jokos, did our ritual and drew our Odu, and that Odu was present and a living vehicle, an energized vehicle of these principles present with us when we were meeting in person at the Afiba Center.
yes.
Okay, so
And so that photograph behind us is that original um, work that she did.
plate, yes,
Yeah, the
absolutely.
original plate.
Plate of,
Yeah,
yes,
with the cornmeal.
yes, right.
Yes.
And
Right.
so one, right, you can see where the meal is pushed up and her finger left that little dab, it's
Mhm,
very
mhm,
delicately done. So
mhm. Yes. Yes. Thank you. I've been wanting, keep forgetting to ask you to do that for us for a while. Just to spread the knowledge,
yeah.
right? And then spread the word, and
Hmm.
uplift again our traditions, right? Our many um, knowledge traditions, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
representational systems.
Mhm.
And yeah, and all
Absolutely.
and in a sense, what charge we're under, right? What charge the Joko, you know,
Mhm.
also. So
Mhm.
okay, thank you, thank you for sharing that. Um, all right, I guess we can get to our topic, right? Which is just another day in America, right? I guess it's really what it is, right?
Mhm. Just
Well, our title, right? The full-chested racism in the post-racial U.S. With a nod and the impetus in the moment being from these leaked chats from the young Republicans. Um, but really, the point is, who's surprised by that? Um,
mhm.
but it isn't just the surprise, though. No one should, in a sense, should be surprised, really.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but it is significant. I think the leak is significant because it
Mhm.
has been, a talking point of the political right in this country um, for decades, that racism isn't a problem, right? Uh, there aren't, there isn't a problem of racist, right, in the country, and
Mhm.
there certainly isn't some structural thing, right? Some kind of
Mhm.
thing called structural racism,
Mhm.
and we aren't racist and all this, and kind of the worst thing you can call somebody is a racist, right? In terms of how they, might feel about that, and but if you ain't racist, stop acting racist, right? Stop doing racist stuff. Or just stop trying to say that the stuff you're saying isn't, you're trying to get with the common sense type stuff. But the chat was just open, right? Just open and blatant, and to the
Mhm.
degree, right, that the right wing has embraced not just old fashioned U.S. racism, but I guess what might call in post World War II, right? The primary you know symbols of racism, the Nazis and
Yeah. Yeah.
Hitler, and above all other fascists, right? The Nazis and Hitler, right? And
Yeah.
above the Confederacy, above just and so just the open embrace, right? And this kind of repeated open embrace that we're seeing, because I'm not sure if you heard the other story that also came out, right? um, so yeah, this young Republicans chat, and we should be clear that the people that it's been reported, in order to be a young Republican, that's 18 to 40.
Mhm.
I've also heard, other institutions where, youth ends at 35, right? So the Republicans take it to 40. The
Mhm.
That there were over 2,000 chats, or
Yeah.
text in the thread, actually.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and the folks doing the chatting are, within their 20s and 30s. So we're talking about grown people, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that, right? Grown people.
Mhm.
And even 30s getting close to 40, right? The
Mhm.
But along with that, right, there was this other story that came out. I don't know. Did you hear about the? I think it was a state legislature, Republican legislator, somewhere. Need to look it up. With a swastika built into the American flag behind him at his desk or in the office or something like that.
I glanced over it. I didn't click it. I didn't go into it. I saw
Right.
it and said, "Okay,
Well, you
I'll
didn't
get
have
back."
to, right? Because
But yeah,
you
go ahead.
because you see what the point is. I mean, that
Mhm.
is the point, that here's another Republican, actually official, right, or elected official, or somebody in that elected official's office, Republican, with
Mhm.
a stylized, again,
Mm.
Nazi flag, right? So this, clearly, folks are not, they are comfortable with an open embrace of the very fascist that their grandfathers, their great grandfathers, their great grandmothers fought against, right?
Mhm.
Were part of the
Mhm.
united front against fascism.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, it's and I don't think, and again, not just fascism, but Nazism, which is the fascism most people know and recognize, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I believe it's a given that if you embrace Nazism, that comes with embracing racism, racial hierarchies, etc. So yeah, full chested, right? They're just quite out in the open, and
Mhm.
they may have thought that chat was private. I mean, you did see the report of the one chat, or the one message. If this ever gets leaked, blah blah blah, right? Um,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
so fully aware, right, of their their
Public
nefariousness.
public reaction. Right. Well,
Mm,
likely, yeah, likely public reaction. And um I mean, I guess uh okay, that left me. As soon as I said I guess it went but that's
mhm,
okay. It'll come back.
mhm,
Actually didn't want to go into that at this point in the discussion. But yeah, the part of, what's being seen, or why it causes, why it's causing any kind of, I think, as Mr. Vance said, pearl clutching that he wasn't
mhm,
going to engage in,
mhm. Because of what some kids said online or whatever. Yeah,
I don't know what else he said, but
that's what he said.
I
Because of what some kids, because
said,
kids said
said
stupid
online.
stuff
I see.
online. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay. So anyway, not going to engage in any pearl clutching. And um
Mhm,
here I see emerging in the um uh discourse about the incident that the White House is taking a dismissive stance and not gonna,
mhm,
or, and whatever. So we know how
mhm.
that's working. But
The
you know,
same. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so what we have, right, is so many decades of a conventional ethic, right, as people described so many times, described it as, the racism becoming impolite, right, at
Right.
least, and immoral, at worst. But the reasons why, aren't really grounded in anything. My current thing is we're still in the era of scientific racism. We never left that era, because the ideas that would uproot it um, haven't been as far spread and far and wide and as deeply impressed as those original ideas that are passed down intergenerationally, you know,
Mhm,
oral history, or a common
mhm,
understanding, and get passed down in
mhm,
various ways. So
mhm,
they were in the area of era of scientificism is not to say that there are still non-European people in zoos, you know what I'm saying, or that there's a direct look for missing links between non-European
well,
people
it
and
updates, right? It updates with the science, right? It's
yeah, but it's the same
yeah,
the
just
fundamental notion.
yeah, exactly, right. Just just updated, as new science is in invented and new ways of deploying them, right? And to explain the hierarchy, right? To justify
Yeah,
the hierarchy.
ways to explain the heart right, of explaining the hierarchy, and so we've there's not been a leaving behind, like again, a categorical and thorough denouncement or denouncing, of the notion that, as they are saying, Western civilization is the superior, quote unquote, civilization. And as those arguments are arguments against that social Darwinistic
Mm-hmm,
notion have emerged, the need to try to stamp out that kind of
mm-hmm,
inquiry, that
mm-hmm,
kind of,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
exploration, it becomes a political necessity. But this is so basically one of the reasons that this is not surprising, is we understand that racism only got a facelift anyway. You know what I'm saying? It only had this wasn't uh, uh, some kind of profound, there never was a profound systemic change. There was only these very superficial, and as we're learning, kind of very superficial um, and loose, even legal uh,
Yeah.
structures
So I don't know if I can
together,
completely agree with you,
Okay.
because I do think the kind of change that happened did have some profound effects
Well, you
in
know what?
quality of life for a lot of people, right?
Let me say that by saying that I'm not arguing there's been no change and nothing.
Well,
No,
yeah, but yeah.
I think the facelift has been important, and I do think it is very significant. Yes, there's been a huge change in quality of life and a huge change in expectations, social
Mhm,
expectations among people and
mhm,
whatnot.
mhm,
What it's perhaps not has not been is enough to and perhaps the threshold that we're at is inserting those much deeper
mhm,
understandings that actually dispel the mythologies of white
mhm,
supremacy,
mhm,
and being able to get to these are the substantial reasons
mhm.
why. This is the evidence. This is what this looks like. This is what, what I mean, into a deeper conversation. But that being said, go ahead and say what you're
Well, I
saying. But no,
think
I didn't.
that I still got to push back. Um, it, the intensity of the regressive movement is because of the effectiveness, right, of the of the corrective narrative, right,
Mhm.
and because of fighting and clawing all the way, um, notions of white supremacy have been severely damaged and dismantled that they have to assert in the way they're asserting right now. They have had to continue to rely on the scientific racism, right? Because it wasn't that the bell curve book wasn't that long ago, and I know there have been things since then, and certainly these folks on the extreme far right and the various dark enlightenment neo-reactionary folk, are all appealing to these, this
Mhm.
pseudoscience, the pseudo race science,
Mhm.
and just making crap up, right? And then there are those, so there's the hard science, the hard scientific racism, or at least the attempt to use hard science to support racism, though all it ever does is undermine the notions. But then the
Mhm.
social sciences are, deployed in the same way around, particularly around these notions of of cultural depravity and cultural disadvantage and just lack of value systems, etc. Right, and um, so the
Mhm.
attack is total, but the attack
Mhm.
needed to be total, right? A Charlie Kirk needed to be created, right? Needed to be platformed to
Mhm.
challenge specifically
Mhm.
the narratives on college campuses, um,
Mhm.
because they have been effective, right? So yes, um, those those the white supremacist narratives, the mythologies being promoted as histories, and science, have been taking blows really since forever, right? But especially since the middle of the 20th century. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and in this moment, right? And it is that desperate clawing back, that we're living through now. So right, this in this last 10 years, 15 years, um, uh, repopularization of the Great Replacement theory,
Mhm.
and again these the embrace of of open racism, right? I'm thinking about a couple of things here. Um, the kinds of racisms revealed in this chat thread, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
All of the various kinds of prejudices we expect, right, from the from the most regressive, right? So, but
Mhm.
interestingly, though, right, as the White House, through J.D. Vance, is downplaying it as kids who are saying stupid things online shouldn't be held, even though these kids are like in their 30s and shit. The
Yes.
But there's clear anti-Semitism. Now, this
Mhm.
is a White House that's going after universities for so-called anti-Semitism, right, and not protecting Jewish students, but within their own ranks, and as folks have been pointing out, the next generation of leadership in the Republican Party, right? These are people within 5 years of J.D. Vance's age, 6 years of J.D. Vance's age, are
Mhm.
openly embracing, right, as some of the worst and most recognizable anti-Semitism, right?
Mhm.
Of course, we know the level of duplicity, though, among these folks. But this larger context, right? Um, this what they think is, a an internal conversation that they're having among themselves so they can speak freely, right? Revealing what they really think about this country, the people in this country, etc. Is with all of the crassness that one might expect, when you aren't on stage.
Mhm.
But in the same week, that if it hasn't happened already, it's likely that the Supreme Court is going to just go ahead and completely overturn or just make useless the Voting Rights Act. Within
Mhm.
that context,
Mhm.
along with the ongoing, um,
Mhm.
thuggish
Mhm.
behavior, um, you know, human rights abusing behavior of ICE, these other federal agencies that are aiding them, um, who have been who have received the signal from the Supreme Court that it's okay to racially profile, right? And now this clear effort to um, to completely criminalize dissent, as they spent the week with this narrative about the upcoming demonstrations around the country this weekend, these so-called hate America rallies, right? And using that language. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about all that.
Mhm.
The chat tells us what we've already known, right? About what they feel, in their deepest hearts, right? About what the world is and what the hierarchies of the world should be. All of it, right? The racism,
Mhm.
and all the forms of racism, the
Mhm.
misogyny. I mean, just my goodness, right? The misogyny, the
Mhm.
homophobia, all of it, right? Just and what has been reported. If you didn't read the article, it's just a snippet, right, of 2,000 plus text, right?
Right. 28,
And
something
every
like
time I've
28.
heard that 2,000 plus text, it is
Mhm.
said in the context of, and the rest of it's like this, right? Like what
Right.
this little bit that you've gotten here.
Right.
So so that, and then this language of, several weeks ago, Benny Johnson, the podcaster Benny Johnson, in support of the National Guard in Washington, talking about neighborhoods that need to be bulldozed, right? This language of black fatigue,
Mhm.
this weaponized black fatigue about that white people are tired of dealing with black people.
Mhm.
These Christian nationalist, charismatic Dominia Seven Mountains, MAGA evangelical preachers who are uh, just, I mean, talking so bad about black people, right? I just, I can't even, I don't even want to try to repeat some of that stuff, but just, off the chain stuff though, right?
Mm.
Demonizing, in some cases for these people, literally demonizing,
Mhm.
black in their eyes. There's this discursive environment that's being created while this these policy things um, have been laid out since January, right? And now the uplifting of an open racist, Charlie Kirk, an exponent of the Great Replacement theory, and within what, 5 years of the so-called summer of racial reckoning,
Mhm.
and what we got, about 2 years of cosplay on racial reckoning,
Mhm.
and now this, here we are,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, yeah, here we are. And yeah, 2000, more than 2029,
Mm-hmm.
2000, not just 2000 pages.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, something that struck me about, or that also strikes me about this kind of conversation whenever it exposes that I don't know what other groups of people, the kinds of conversation that other groups of people have, but the nature of that there is so much of it that this is what they talk about and how they talk. These people, it says to me that to be a racist is to walk consumed with this process
Mm-hmm.
of categorizing and putting people in their, you got to be carrying
Mm-hmm.
that around constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who does that? I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
literally, and I haven't been
Yes.
in all kinds of, say, black alternative or black
Yeah.
radical or black national. I haven't been in every kind of circle, but I can say with confidence, as an almost 60-year-old black woman, that I don't recall us. And when we are sitting around talking about social conditions, when we were talking about the white man, capital T, capital W, capital M, it is not a conversation about denigration. It's not this kind of juvenile, slur passing it's actually not that.
it's about conditions and
It's
power.
about
And
conditions. It's about, yes, it's about conditions. It's about power. It's about um, perception of threat or measuring threat level, or right.
Mhm,
It's about uh,
mhm.
the conditions for group defense. It's about these kinds of things. But we're not
The
sitting up
prospects for
talking about
solidarity.
and all exactly. It's not a conversation about the uh uh hmm human value or human
Or
worth,
lack thereof.
real or lack thereof, right, of people of European descent.
Mhm.
It simply
Right,
isn't. You know what I'm
right,
saying?
that's right,
And
right.
so
Because we're
this
not coming from that hierarchical, racialized thinking like that.
no, and like in a real way, in a real
Mhm,
way. And that
mhm,
again, that's what speaks to me, that to be a racist is to, you carry that around like you carry around what? Like you carry that around like just your everyday, it is your lens. It's not a only a position. It is what has struck me is the profundity of what it means to have a racist worldview. This is the
mhm,
means by
mhm,
which you order
mhm,
your world.
mhm.
Otherwise,
Right. It is
what's
all
the-
encompassing.
it's all encompassing. You know what I'm saying? It's all
Mhm.
encompassing.
It
That's
really is.
why pages and pages. This is what these people talk about.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
what I mean.
And
The
all the
level of
various
banter,
expressions of it, right? Because as we know, there are the
all the
impolite and the
very
polite and
expressions.
what's the word
More,
I'm looking for? The sort of the philanthropic racist, right? There
yeah,
all these versions of it.
yeah, all these versions of it. I'm talking about though. I'm talking about that which is the racism of this kind. The
Hmm.
aggressive, dark, you know,
Hmm.
this kind of piece. And it's the I've heard the term a lot this week, the banality of evil, that oft, cited
Hmm.
concept. Um, but yeah, the banality of the racist, the matter of fact nature, that and not only matter of, but anyway, I think I've said it. I don't need to state it again. uh, the term, I think the takeaway term is all encompassing. It is the absolute focus of
Hmm.
all things
Hmm.
and all
Hmm.
explanations at all times. It is
Hmm.
at the forefront. And no, it
Hmm.
reminds me of when that statement that Trump made about you can grab women by the privates and
Hmm.
do it right and all that, and it got dismissed as locker room talk, and everybody picked up on
Hmm.
that excuse, and there were a number of uh, men who were critical of that, who said, well, actually, no. Um, there's never a time when I engage in that kind of conversation, no matter where, this is not just some general talk that
No,
men have
because you know
because
what? It's locker room talk for teenagers,
uh,
not men.
not men.
Teenage
Absolutely.
boys who
Absolutely.
are, famously sex obsessed,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But not
Yeah.
men, because one grows out of that.
Yes. Yes.
And even
And
then, and let me not cast aspersions on all teenage boys, because even then, it ain't everybody, right?
it's not
So,
everybody. It's not everybody, and also the quality of the difference between a sex obsessed teenage boy,
yeah.
and the because I hear it all the time working in high schools, and the
Mhm.
all of the banter and the it is
Exactly.
it doesn't have the it part of what was being critiqued about that statement and that conversation was uh the intrinsic aggression, the
Mhm.
intrinsic kind of, you know what I'm saying,
And
this
entitlement.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
and entitlement. And yes, and as you said, men don't have this, adult people don't have these kinds of conversations, but anyway, so it's,
That's exactly right.
that
That
sort of
is
thing.
exactly right. I can say in my adult life with among my friends, when we have talked about sex and even using colloquial terms, just because they're
Yeah,
colloquial, right?
yeah,
Never talked about doing something like that.
yeah,
That
yeah.
or certainly in a way that's acceptable. I mean,
Mhm, mhm,
and I don't think we were unusual, right? This is
mhm,
anecdotal,
mhm,
but I don't think
mhm,
we weren't really unusual in that way. Just in terms of because again, one grows out of that,
mhm,
or one should.
mm.
But then
Yeah,
I can
one
also say that growing up, a man of color, working class, like my friends, we did not grow up with the same sense of entitlement. There's the entitlement that comes with, you know,
mhm,
maleness, being a first
mhm,
boy and all that stuff, or being the youngest son, and
mhm.
all the various kinds
Well,
of nuances of relationship and culture,
yeah,
but not
yeah,
that type of entitlement, right? So anyway,
mhm,
you understand
mhm.
what?
Yes, I do, and to all of the uh, folks who will think about, well, what about the misogyny in rap music, and what about the, and whatnot? Yeah, well, what about it? It's a different conversation,
It's a
actually.
different conversation,
It's a
and
different
I might
conversation.
ask, who platforms it?
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
distributes what?
We
And why
can
can't the other songs
absolutely
get on the air?
we can absolutely um in our time, I'm a little bit younger than you, but we can absolutely uh refer to a time in our memory, and certainly in our parents' memory,
Mhm,
where that kind of language, that kind of ideation, that kind of, the misogynistic ideation and all this kind of stuff was
mhm.
was I dare say nowhere present in our music culture. I dare say. And even our comedy culture, where they would, where you had some
Mhm.
very, what do they used to call them, blue
Yeah,
performers,
the
blue
blue, yeah,
comedians.
the blue performers.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? But this
yeah.
other thing is a new sociological phenomenon for us,
Mhm, mhm,
and we have a living memory to attest to it. We still are alive to attest to that. So, yeah, this thing about this being just the banter, of these folks, and that that it is so prominent in their casual conversation is revealing in itself.
exactly,
Something is,
exactly.
on another
In some
level.
ways, that's the
But
most revealing in some ways, right? That is just so
yeah,
not second
yeah,
nature, first nature, right? This
no,
is just
first
who we
nature.
are.
This is all people talk about. This is all you're concerned with. Who's who's an F, the N's,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
P's,
mhm.
all
Obsessed,
you're
right?
concerned
An
with.
obsession.
Yeah. So in reading, I read the Political article, and looked at some headlines and whatnot in my little tiny time that I had to look at the material today. But this, I saw something that made me say, "Oh, so you're trying to suggest that this is a marginal attitude in the Republican enclaves and Republican society." So these say, like, oh, these the this is the MAGA contingent in the
Right.
trying to pass that off. Well, these are the young Republicans, and we
These are
have
young
known
Republicans.
about the young Republicans
And the
for
young
decades.
Republican leadership,
decades,
right?
and
Their
young
leadership.
Republican leadership.
Some of
Leadership.
them, at least one of them, working in a congressional office, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes.
These are your, yeah,
And it's a
as
pattern,
much
though.
as
I mean, this continues, right? For how long? I mean, are we to forget the whole notion of the Southern strategy? That
absolutely.
the Republicans knew they could exploit those resistant to opening up the society racially. They knew they could do that, so they embraced the racist. They embraced the racist.
Right.
But yeah, we have to pretend that's not what's happening. We have to pretend, even though there's the research is out there and folks from within the movements, right, are reporting this, right, that the emergence of evangelical Christians, evangelical fundamentalists into politics is because they were resistant to Brown versus the Board of Education. Forget the Voting Rights Act. Brown
Right.
versus the Board of Education. And then
Right.
when they get challenged by the Carter administration, that okay, if you're going to choose to discriminate, then okay, fine, but you lose your tax exempt status.
Uh-huh.
And then they became political, right? But again, it's because of the racism,
Uh-huh.
and racism is
Mm-hmm.
colonial ideology, right? It's one of those things that supports this notion of racial hierarchy with white folks on top, and particular white folks on top of the white folks, right?
Absolutely.
It's colonial. It's the ideology of this colonialism that helps justify and make livable, right? Allows people to live with the
Yes.
inequality that they see before them, and the hurt that has been brought upon humanity. And everybody knows in all these
Yes.
places in the world where folks can go on vacation or hop from one settler colony to another settler colony,
Yeah.
all of that, right? All the ideology, or one of the major ideologies to to justify and frame and ideate and imagine the colonial project, right? Which is always a project of extraction, right? Of forms of wealth extraction, forms of capital extraction. And when you talk about, how obsessed, how yeah, the obsession, right, with these racialized ideas, and really with these other races, right, or the
Mm-hmm.
other gender, or these,
Mm-hmm.
heaven forbid, these other genders, right, and
Mm-hmm.
just like you're always thinking about it. And it reminded
Yeah.
me of how, this idea of all encompassing, right, how it becomes an all encompassing thing in their
Yeah.
lives. And in the
Yeah.
ways you were talking about, in terms of like the scientific part of it, or the polite intellectual who is a proponent of Western civilization very politely, right? And would never think of himself or herself as a racist, but it's just the superiority of Western civilization for whatever reasons. What was the book that came out that not too long ago? And I don't want to accuse him of intentional racism. What was it? Steals, Guns, and Germs, something like
All
that.
right.
And
Yes.
you know,
Arms and steel.
this sort of
Yeah.
thing.
A
But it
few.
reminded me, right,
Yeah.
the all-encompassing character of it, the thing that Fanon writes, right, the way he describes colonialism as a totalitarian system, right? Yeah, and totalitarian in that it frames every part of life, human activity, relationship to the land, relationship to each other,
Yes.
right? You know,
Yes.
it is a
Yeah.
total system, and the
Yes.
beneficiaries of it, I
Yes.
have to be totally obsessed with it because the other part of it is the obsession with maintaining the hierarchy, right? Not losing place, and the discomfort
Absolutely.
with losing place.
Yes.
You know, yeah,
Yes.
that and the anxiety, all the anxiety associated with losing
Yeah.
place, and
Yes.
it's been on hyperdrive in this country and certainly throughout the world because we know this is a global phenomenon, really. But
Mhm,
hyperdrive with the
mhm.
election of what I just saw somebody call the best Republican president there's ever been, Barack Obama. But again, for all of his conservatism, right? And that
Yeah.
wing, that corporate wing of the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
absolutely um,
Yeah.
didn't matter. It was so upsetting to the
Mhm.
symbolic order of the colonial
Mhm.
society that these people
Mhm.
just said, "That's it, right?" Tea Party morphs into Trumpism and MAGA. Here we are,
Mhm.
right? Now Charlie Kirk is an American hero, full
Mhm.
on racism. I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
else to call it.
No, there's nothing else to call it, and there is, in
Well,
terms of
colonialism, I guess, but
right, but it's right. Six in one hand, half dozen in another. Yeah. Um,
hmm
because yeah, um, this kind of it's this subtle manipulation, this kind of very subtle, two fork tongue mode
hmm
of um uh help of ushering in and trying to consolidate the this full chested assertion, right?
hmm
Was it Rosalind Carter that said
Yes,
making racism
Ronald
it
Reagan.
polite again or comfortable again or acceptable
Yep.
again or however whatever the
Made
phrase was,
She said what
make
Ronald
right,
Reagan made white people comfortable with their racism again. And
racism
that was
again.
1980.
Right.
Okay.
And it was people have been talking about it for as long, and you know what I'm saying? And it took this kind of, or it's taking, and as I think we talked about earlier, we know that ways will be found to deny even what we
Yeah.
see right before our eyes
Yeah.
unfolding, but
Yeah.
long has been the kind of like the bell ringing for, hey, there it is, here it comes, this is taking shape, here it comes, they're doing this, they're doing that. And folks, feel very easily, feel very comfortable, feel
hmm
very
hmm
inevitable
hmm
about this change in race relation, even if it's, at a surface level, relatively, still this very marked change in racial relations, such that, right, it can be said, oh, we're in a post-racial, oh, pshaw, and have it, and that doesn't leave mouths agape like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous, you know what I mean? Except to folk who understand that that's ridiculous. But a lot of
hmm
people were able to say, well, yeah, actually, I guess it is post-racial,
Well,
there's space
that's what was useful about Barack Obama because before that, you could say,
hmm
and in fact, even the term emerged after the Obama election, right? Post-racial,
post-racial. Um and
which
this
really, well, whoever coined it as post-racial, which was never accurate because don't you really mean post-racist?
fist.
But then,
Yeah,
of course, it isn't, is it? So maybe that's why
right.
you said post-racial.
Or yeah, or just really not really, yeah, just not really a fully considered kind of a thing.
hmm
But
hmm
yeah, these, or even if it's, not with, doesn't fit neatly kind of into those lines and that discussion and that kind of
hmm
logical development or expression of that notion and idea, what it does play upon is, the conversation that we certainly were having about that usually being progress or not progress. Have we really made the kind of progress that we think we've made, or is this really a thing, or is it, or and there was that kind of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
certainly, within the, certainly within the community, um, very much organized around or centered in the perception of uh, this more openly integrated, you know, society, and the anti-racist values, that were in vogue, that have been in vogue. But then it also, as you have cite and do cite, this is not this is the minority. We talk about it. This is
It
minority. This
is
is
a
the
minority position.
majority of, yeah, of people of European descent in America that were in alignment with the dog whistles. Not everybody was responding to the dog whistles. Not everybody was,
That's right.
and in terms of whoever stayed home, it wasn't just a number of us, proportionally, and non-European people of non-European descent who were staying home. It was a whole lot of people of European descent, what I mean? And so all of these
As
things,
it
and
is in
even
every election,
as
right?
it is in
Because
every election. So there's actually, all of this, oh, they just couldn't vote for a black woman. Actually, a lot of them did vote for a black woman. A lot of people did. A lot of people
popular
European
vote, just
for Kamala Harris.
just over 1% of the popular vote, right? So it was basically split. Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
forget the electoral college because that's rigged. That's a racist rigging anyway.
The purpose of it.
But
Mm-hmm.
but just that, right? That popular vote shows how, because black people didn't do that on their own, right? And even the just
Mm-mm.
the just over 50% of Latinx folks who voted for Kamala. All of the people of color, it was more than 50% voted for Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, a significant
Mm-hmm.
number of white
Mm-hmm.
folks, of white American voters also, a minority of white American voters, but a significant minority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, yeah, this accuracy business,
Hmm.
this accuracy over you know, over bias, let's see
Hmm.
what is, or expectation even, and what is the word? I want to say just habitual thinking,
Hmm.
um, over, expectation and habitual thinking, and, falling into those kinds of uh, traps, right? That keep us out of that an accuracy place, yes, absolutely. So, yes, there are a lot of people who are very much on the side, and I've certainly am, of let the full-chested racist be full and speak
It's
up and speak out.
refreshing.
Really see you.
It's refreshing just in
You.
the sense of, again, it makes the contradictions clear, right? And stark. And when you want to make these claims, and particularly you black MAGA, or even if you ain't black MAGA, just black Republican, it
Mm-hmm.
makes the
You
contradictions
just,
clear, right?
yeah.
Just as the Democrats continue to make the contradictions clear with their poor political decisions. The
Mm-hmm.
so keep making these contradictions clear, and also see how serious these people are. You better take them seriously when they're
Yeah.
talking about ovens and whatever else they want to do to you, bulldoze your neighborhood. You better take them seriously. Why aren't you? They've done it before. Why aren't you? And
Right.
they want to go back to when they did it openly.
Absolutely.
The McKinley era. I mean, they keep evoking the Gilded Age, right? And
Yeah.
Doug's about to evoke law, but the Insurrection Act from 1807. He had already
Mm,
talked about a 1790s law. What they trying to go First Republic, right? They
mhm,
reestablished the First Republic. It's saying that
mhm,
that's what the Confederates, what Tad Sturmer said, that's what the Confederates were
mhm,
fighting for, to maintain the First Republic, the slave republic.
mhm,
Yeah, the
mhm,
originalists, right? They want to go back to the First Republic.
mhm, mhm,
And does it not feel like there was always that, I used to hear the cry when I was growing up, the South shall rise again. Doesn't it feel like that?
mhm.
Doesn't it feel like that? I mean, what's his name? Trump may be from New York, but his home state is Florida now.
Yeah,
Where's
right.
he from,
Right.
right? I mean, but really though, the South,
At the
ideologically, the
Canadian
South
border. South is everything, everything south of the Canadian
Malcolm
of the
X, right?
Canadian border.
South is everything south of the Canadian border. There we
You're
go.
right. So another,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's kind of like I've been thinking about um all of this volatility and all of this current action as having a purifying effect. And by purifying, I mean bringing to the surface,
yeah,
bringing all
yeah.
the impurities up and out,
Mhm,
up
mhm.
and out. And yeah, they're well, I'm going to say this and I wonder what you think of it. Um in terms of that first republic ideation, in terms of what the intent of the original founders and whatnot, in comparison to what uh in particular our efforts and political pushing over time have made of the democracy and the expectation of democracy, and who gets to be a fraternity, a frater, who gets to be a frater in the fraternity, and the brotherhood, and who gets to be an equal brother and whatnot. Um, that yeah, there is an original idea of who the American democracy or sharing of power, the notion of sharing of power is for, and what that expectation has become. And so it feels like uh, yeah, a very kind of profound choosing time, a profound reckoning. Yeah, kind of what kind of polity do you want? What do you want that to look like? You know, everybody. What do you want that to look like? And how shall power be distributed? What kind of power, and who gets to have power over what, and all of these questions coming to the fore as if anew.
Is that a question?
It wasn't it wasn't really a question. I think because I did ask you to answer a question. Really, the question
Or at
you
least a
try to
comment
create a
of what I
question
what I think of that? Um,
about, yeah,
but
the democratic, the notion of democratic space, democratic
well,
values, power
well,
sharing.
in the
Mhm,
history of the country, whatever has been democratic, the forming of a republic, um, forming of a republic in the interest of elite property men, right? Um, but just because that is the country they actually created for themselves, right? In what some public historians are calling the First Republic,
mhm,
the the ideas embedded in some of the literature,
mhm,
the in the philosophical, the discursive environment of the Enlightenment that was talking about
mhm,
natural rights and human rights, right? That the language of human rights is already there in Alauda Equiano's narrative, right? Which I can't remember its exact date, but it may predate, right? The 1776. and even if it doesn't, it's in that era. So,
Mhm.
those who over the, now, by the 1700s, those, Africans, indigenous folks
Mm.
who are participating in the colonial project of Western civilization,
Mhm.
one way, voluntarily or involuntary, whatever the case may be, right? Are part of this discursive environment, and you know take up the cudgel. Okay, so you're, the rights of man, huh? Well, am I not a man? I mean, am I not a man and a brother? And even though, there's that aspect, and maybe the aspect more has to do with the brother being on his knees rather than the
Absolutely.
assertion, right? Rather than the
Absolutely.
assertion. And recognizing, okay, is this the language that you're using? Then this is language we'll use for freedom, then, right? And that expresses itself in the Haitian Revolution, right? In the Mexican War for Independence, right? And this language of the democratic. Um, I don't remember who it was, and I think it was more or less a normie, to use that word, right? A normie historian, maybe a normie progressive historian, but
Mhm.
making the point that really the history of the United States, the political history of the United States, is really the history of the expanding of the franchise, right, from those elite property men to various other sectors of the society, all the way up until this point, and that's an ongoing struggle, right? And
Mhm.
um, so I really think that's about the enslaved people, indigenous people, workers, um, making democracy mean something, or making this other term that they like to use, because
Mhm.
they don't always use democracy, right? And when
Mhm.
things don't go the way, when it's like, hey, wait a minute, what just happened? Oh, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Yeah, but you're a democratic republic, so quit acting stupid.
Mhm.
Quit acting stupid.
Mhm.
The but freedom, right? This other term they use, freedom, and what does freedom mean, right? And during we're coming up on this 250th anniversary, right, of 1776. What did freedom mean during the Independence War? When, okay, so the people who want to continue to keep me and my people enslaved are fighting for their freedom, but the king and his people are saying, hey, leave the plantation, come fight with us, and we'll give you freedom, right? So how am I to weigh that, right? I mean, why am I to put my interest with you? So anyway, so we make it meaningful, right? Then we have created that democratic space. All the various communities, constituencies, through our resistance, are pushing, are demanding the space and taking the space, right? I mean, that's the thing, the sit-ins, right? People took space, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and whatever people may think about, various forms of
Mhm.
nonviolent action. It's action. It's not passivity, right? It's taking that space. It's a tactic. The And so here we're in this point where, they're trying to take all that space back. I mean, because we've created so much space, and people aren't going for it, right? Again, you know, um, the white population is split. There may still be more than 50% that are clinging to the old ways, if for no other reason, because of fear and or
Mhm.
familiarity.
Mhm.
But it's 51, 50, there's a split there. And I see they've been blowing up lately, but I'm gonna give them some props too. I want to, give props to, I think, Jennifer Welch in particular, because she's the one I heard say it, but both Jennifer Welch and her partner on the I've Had It podcast, Pumps.
Mm-hmm.
Because she she in a conversation with Don Lemon the other day, and Wajahat Ali, said, this is white
Mm-hmm.
people's job, right? It is white people's job to get these other white people, right, to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't losing anything; you're gaining, right?
Right.
Let go.
Right.
Let go of the myth. Let go of the mythology, and you'll actually be
Mm-hmm.
happy, right? And all that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
but we all, so another thing I wanted, because we're an hour and 15, and we wanted to be disciplined with our time.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
other thing I don't want to forget, and actually, I think similarly, the way in which white populations in this settler colony and other
Mm-hmm.
settler colonies, and are recognizing um, these systems of domination and these networks of power and the dynamics, um,
Mm-hmm.
and are embracing what it means to be woke, because that's what woke means, right? To be aware of these
Mm-hmm.
systems of power and
Yes.
hierarchy and social relation, and relation to the
Yes.
land, etc. Right? Here,
Yes.
Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, right? It's Europe, right? As Europe panics because of its browning, it there are Europeans who are like, well, yeah, this is the consequence of colonialism,
Capitalism.
right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
This is what happens, right? So
Your
and
brain chickens are coming home to
in the
roost.
same way, and
Yeah.
particularly now in this country, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
same way that a significant part of the North American white population is
Mm-hmm.
coming to grips with racist structures and wanting to engage, and how do we dismantle these things, right? How do we rejoin the human race? And um,
Yes.
socialism is also not
Yes.
the boogie boo that it used to be,
Yes.
and that continues to expand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody is scared by the democratic socialism of
Mm-hmm.
Zoran Mamdani or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of y'all, and again, I reference again, when I believe when Elizabeth Warren was endorsing Mom Donnie, or they were doing something together, and some reporter, I'm guessing it was a gotcha type question: is democratic socialism
Yeah.
the future of the Democratic Party? And without hesitation,
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Warren said, yes, yes, it is. No
Mm-hmm.
equivocation, right? So again, change, and it's because of the change that the repression and the regression, and this
Mm-hmm.
turn to fascism, because in many ways it's a last gasp. And as I've
Mm-hmm.
said before, I don't know how the country survives it in this, because there is a committed base who have already demonstrated their unwillingness to
Yeah.
accept results of elections
Yes.
and
Yes.
to do something about it
Yes.
physically, right?
Yes.
So I don't, we'll see. And with the military is split, right? I just saw a little short today from a military major who didn't say he was retired, but was like, no, this is, you can't be criminalizing protest, right? Like they're trying to do. You can't do this, right? This is so. I don't know how. I honestly don't know how this settler colony rebounds. And the thing that is kind of working my brain right now is, as all this is happening, the seductive character of just sort of the normalizing, right?
Mhm.
It's like every day can seem like it's going on like every other day, and this is news
Yeah.
you hear, and even
Yes.
when it's directly
Yeah.
affecting you, because we're all dealing with these prices, they're still just
Yes.
kind of every day it just gets a little more normal.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I've heard a couple of people say, and I agree. I'm in. I think it's important that there's going to be this massive turnout this weekend for these No Kings
Mhm.
Day demonstrations, protests,
Mhm.
and marches. But
Mhm.
then what happens on the 19th and the 20th,
Absolutely. And the
the
20th.
21st, etc.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Which
in a time when probably need to make this country ungovernable.
yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, that is the thing. And if I have thought, if there is some kind of, uh, everybody's looking at these the new some special and midterm elections and what seats they can regain and whatnot. If there is some kind of um, pushing back, successful pushing back on this thing, how quickly will uh, American population leave the business unfinished. One, because we
Right.
don't know what the
Exactly.
business is to finish. And two, or whatever, it's not really a one or two, but another aspect is the exceptionalism gene kicks in.
Hmm.
Like, see,
Hmm.
we knew America couldn't be da 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 da, and our system has shown that da 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 da, and
Yep.
all of these, you
Yep.
know, all
Hmm.
of these worms,
Back into a
which
complacency.
back into a complacency, which I've also thought that might something that they decide to do strategically.
Hmm.
Seeing that we're a little bit overwhelmed, with this. Maybe we didn't expect this level of what I mean of resistance and dissent and
Hmm.
doggedness.
Yeah.
We didn't expect that. Maybe we need to look like
Which I think
and try
is
to.
actually the case right now, right? That they are a little surprised by the pushback they've been getting. They're trying to
Mhm.
pretend that they aren't, and that they really aren't getting pushback, and that the opposition is really sort of fringe. But it's totally unpopular. The
Yes,
program is unpopular. They're unpopular.
popular.
They have a
Yeah,
dedicated base, about a 30% base that can be a problem,
yeah,
but they're extremely as you mentioned earlier, minority position.
yeah. And they have a lot of the mic. They have a
And they
lot of
have
the
a lot of
mic. But
money,
yeah, that
and
part.
and
The
mostly all the platforms, right? Because of corporate ownership,
Yeah,
and that's their real
right,
constituency.
right. So that they can look a lot. They're the camouflage, like
Yeah.
creatures camouflage. They can
Yep.
blow up and look bigger. And look bigger and badder. Um, look bigger and badder than they are. But yeah, um, they are concerned. And yes, the folks who are um and the white folks, and as you were talking about, the kind of the job of uh anti-racist white folk, you know to say, let's join humanity, all of that need to be as full, need to be
Exactly.
as stout, be as
Exactly.
courageous
And out and
as the
proud
models
about it.
in their community.
That's
Yes,
right.
models in their community have been,
That's right. Hmm.
and there are models, in the European community. Um, and yeah, that part. But yeah, any kind of seeming any relief of pressure runs the risk of being overstated as some kind of major victory and a reason why
Yeah.
everybody can, and also people want, to escape this new anxiety and this new sense of fear of political volatility and of
Yeah.
these, these creatures emerging, um
Yes.
so yeah. let that not be the case. Let that not be the case. Let's go the distance and to uproot.
And actually transform the society,
Yes,
liberate
yes,
some communities, yeah.
yes.
Let's
Let's
yeah,
do some truth telling.
let's finish it this time, right? Let's get on over the
Yes,
top.
that part. That part.
Yeah. And the possibilities are there because the crisis is so deep and intense. And again, I don't see how they come back. Not in the same way, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
all of it is because the crisis is in such, or the system is in such crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in
Mm-hmm.
crisis globally, and it feels like
Mm-hmm.
internationally, the people's
Yes.
movements are taking hits everywhere. It feels that way. But I thought it was really good to there was a good reminder in a conversation today, or maybe it was yesterday, between the journalist Danny Haifong and the
Mm-hmm.
journalist Mark Svoboda.
Mm-hmm.
That yeah, the resistance is hard and it's long, and the resistance takes hits. It loses people, and it just has to keep going until it wins. And I am always inspired by the 700-year struggle to free Ireland.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Right on.
700-year
Yeah.
struggle to free Ireland. And there's still Northern Ireland, but hey, there's an independent Irish republic right now. And there's
Yes,
still
that's right.
efforts to liberate Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, right? One of the oldest settler colonies in the world. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Right. Understated and obscured
Yeah. Yeah.
in the
So
understated in the discussion of colonialism. Mm-hmm.
even if it feels like we're taking hits, they're desperate. They're
Yep.
desperate, and their time is numbered, um, and they're losing their grip. And whatever's happening in these other places in the world, um, we'll see. Whatever happened in Madagascar, is Madagascar about to go the way of the Sahelian states? Because
Oh, okay.
there was a coup in Madagascar. It's unclear, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's unclear, popular, just like in the Sahelian states, but it's still unclear. Um, there was the thing that happened in Nepal, right? There's still questions, though, about whether that was a color revolution or, an attempt to reinstate the monarchy. I'm not sure. I haven't heard any updates really lately,
Okay.
but
Mm-hmm.
it is, though, indicative. Something's
Mm-hmm.
going on in Morocco, right? I've been hearing or seeing headlines about youth rebellion in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's youth rebellion in Morocco, I mean, Morocco is, a U.S. and Israeli ally, a problem. So if they're about to overthrow the king, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's indicative of the global crisis. Um, the failure of the right wing project in Argentina, right? Such
Mm-hmm.
that they got to be bailed out when you can't get money for research, but they're going to bail out Argentina. Anyway, I'm starting again, and now we're at one. We have been at
Yeah.
it for an hour and a half,
Time.
so
Yeah.
that we can pick that back up. We can pick that back up. Don't there was an announcement I wanted to make, and maybe we can have somebody on soon before it happens. But there's another Black People's March on the White House coming up, right? So there's this All Kings Day march. U.S. citizens and residents marching really against fascism. And I agree with Danielle Moody. Let's start using the whole word, anti-fascism, instead
Yes.
of
Yes.
yeah. Let's start using that word.
Yeah.
And then there's this
Mhm.
the march planned by the Black is Back Coalition. I think the first Saturday of November.
Mhm.
We can confirm that, but yeah, just want to get that word out there too, right? Folks are going to be, excuse me, marching again in Washington D.C. Um, do you know what the first? Well, it won't be November 1st. I don't. It's so. I guess the second um, Saturday in November, which will be November 8th. I think that'll be the day of the Black People's March on the White House.
Mhm.
And we can confirm that. Um,
And we
and
will.
just getting some announcements out because people are resisting, people are active, um, and this is the time, right, to be active. Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and oh no, wait a minute, that's oh
November
no,
1st.
oh it's this. Yeah, I'm seeing it is Saturday. It is the first Saturday.
Mhm.
Yeah, November 1st.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
there's something that Friday, a conference. Oh, it's a press conference that Friday, and then Saturday, November 1st, um, Malcolm X Park in Washington D.C., which I think is also known as Lafayette Park.
Mhm.
Rally begins at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So keep that one in your back pocket too. And if you happen to be in Washington D.C., maybe you can join the Black People's March, which always has non-Black allies joining in. Anyway, just a couple of announcements, and thank you, folks.
Right on.
Uh, right
Yes.
on. So I guess we can say good night, huh?
We can say good night.
Thank you, folks. I think we forgot to say this last time and supposed to say this. We do want you to subscribe to our channel. We hope that our discussions are interesting, informative,
And Mike.
enlightening,
Yes.
entertaining, infuriating, whatever they may be,
Mhm.
thought provoking. So please subscribe. Help us with the algorithm by liking, and please share. Please share, and don't forget to comment. We would love some comments. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we enjoy talking to each other, but you're welcomed into the conversation, right? And so
Political
please
conversation.
comment,
Yeah.
and we'll be back. We'll be back next week. And again, I know I said this last week, maybe something before next Thursday, but certainly next Thursday we'll be back. Thanks, folks. Like I like to do, let me finish with a quotation from Bob Marley. The Natty Dread album, the song Revolution, quote, Revelation reveals the truth. It takes a revolution to make a solution, unquote. All right, y'all, go make a revolution.
Right on.